Hello, this is Rainer Koschnick from Germany, and I love alternative comics. This episode of the Comics Alternative is brought to you by Patreon supporters like me. Enjoy the show.
This is the Comics Alternative, episode 173, a look at the February Previews catalog. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Comics Alternative. I'm Derek.
And I'm Andy, and we're two guys with PhDs talking about comics.
And it's the beginning of the month, and that means it must be time to look at the latest issue of the Previews catalog. But before we get into that discussion, we want to let all of you guys know that this episode of the Comics Alternative is brought to you by the great folks at Discount Comic Book Service. Go to their website, dcbservice.com, for all of your comics pre-ordering needs. There, you're going to find all DC, Marvel, Image, and Dark Horse titles at 40% off of the cover price if you pre-order. For all of the other publishers, you'll find that those discounts are 20 to 35% off of the cover price. And every single month, you're going to find some wonderful specials. Sometimes those specials will be at 45% off the cover price. Sometimes it's 50% off. But often, you're going to find discounts that are more impressive than that.
And we are recording actually the last day of January, so the February specials and bundles are not up there yet, but if you go take a look at the DCB Service website, you will see some great bundles for January, and I'm sure you're going to have some great bundles in February. One of the ones in January we have the Vertigo New Series bundle, the 13 newest Vertigo issues for 50% off. Also, there is a Valiant bundle, the 7 newest Valiant titles for 50% off. You'll just have to go to the website and see what they have for February. But if that's any indication, there's going to be some great stuff.
That's right. You can never go wrong by going to dcbservice.com because every month they have incredible specials. Go there for all of your comics pre-ordering needs, and after you do get your comics there, please do send them an email and tell them that the two guys with PhDs sent you.
Definitely.
And you know, after going through DCB Service and ordering your comics and filling out everything and then sending that email to the people at Discount Comic Book Service saying, hey, we heard about you guys through the Comics Alternative, you know, relax a little bit, brew yourself a cup of coffee, and I know of a place, Andy, where you can get some great coffee.
You do?
I do, my friend, and that is Just Coffee Co-op, another sponsor of the Comics Alternative. It's a great place to get coffee, tea, and chocolate. All of their coffee is 100% fair trade, it's shade-grown, and it's all organic certified. And what's more, everything is roasted to order. They do everything in small batches, no mass production.
And you know, since Just Coffee Co-op is a cooperative, and in addition to being a worker-focused nature, let me start that over. And you know, Derek, And you know, Derek, Just Coffee Co-op partners with On the Ground to raise money and awareness for sustainable community development in farming regions all over the world. The great thing about it is there's no minimum order, and shipping is absolutely free. I mean, how many places can you get free shipping?
Not many. And you know what? You can get even a better discount if you use our coupon code COMICS at checkout. So go to Just Coffee Co-op, that's justcoffee.coop, and after you place your order, make sure that you put the word COMICS into the coupon area. You'll get 10% off, and as Andy mentioned, it's always free shipping. That's Just Coffee Co-op, a great place to get caffeinated.
That's right, and you need to be caffeinated with all the great titles that we're going to be talking about today from the Previews catalog.
That's right. So, Andy, how have things been with you?
Things have been pretty good. We got back from a wonderful vacation to San Francisco, so we are trying to get back into the normal routines. So things are going pretty well.
Now, what were you doing? I think you had told me before, but I've forgotten what you were specifically going out to San Fran for.
Yeah, well, I may have told listeners and you, Derek, before that I'm a big classic movie fan, and I went actually to a film noir festival. It's called,
that's right, yeah.
It's called Noir City, and its home base is in San Francisco, and that's where the festival starts, and it moves to other cities. So if you're into film noir, they have these festivals in Austin, in Chicago, Kansas City, Portland, Oregon, Washington, D.C., and other cities around. So you can actually go to Noir City or Google Noir City if you're interested in that and see what's coming your way.
Wow. Well, that's good. I'm a big fan of noir, so knowing that there is one of those events in Austin, who knows? Maybe a road trip will be in order.
I tell you, I saw some great films there, Derek. I think you would enjoy them.
Yeah. Well, Andy, before we get into a discussion of the February previews catalog, let's share some listener mail with our listeners.
Okay.
Mail time.
Ooh, the mail's here. That means we get to see our old friend, Mailbox.
And in fact, it's always good to get listener mail, but it's even better when we get listener mail from a creator who listens to the show and who hears something about their work being discussed on the Comics Alternative. And you remember last week, Gwen and I, one of the titles we discussed was a new adaptation from Action Lab, The Cask of Amontillado, the classic Edgar Allan Poe short story. And we spent a lot of time talking about that. And the writer-adapter of that comic, Enrica Jang, sent us an email, and it was really nice. She says, "Hi there, I just listened to your podcast and the review of my adaptation of The Cask of Amontillado. Wanted to thank you for the review and the kind words. It means a lot to Jason and I that people are enjoying it and looking forward to the new series. Also, I was giggling maniacally when I heard the groans about Nevermore at the very end, and happy to hear at least one of you laughing. I'm attaching a pic of the actual script from the final page of our adaptation." And she did. And then she says, and yes, I do love to tell bad jokes, complete with rimshot at the very end. I love puns, and I'm a terror at parties. Thanks very much again, and I do hope you enjoy House of Montresor next month. Sincerely, Enrica Jang, and she says pronounced with a hard J, parenthetically. So we were saying last week, Gwen and I were pronouncing her name Enrica Yang, but she wanted to let us know that it's Jang. So Enrica, thank you very much for the mail, and also we apologize for mispronouncing your last name. We will use a hard J from now on.
Yeah, well, that's cool that she wrote and listened to the podcast and decided to shoot an email. That's great.
Yeah, and the thing that's even more interesting about that is the fact that she found out about the episode and listened to it before I even contacted her. Because what I usually do when it comes to our weekly episodes is I will, put everything up, and then several hours after putting up the week's episode, usually I'll contact the creators directly, maybe through Facebook or maybe Twitter as well, if I can find their addresses and their accounts, and let them know, hey, we discussed your book on this week's episode, which just went up this morning. And so before I even had the opportunity to contact Enrica, she listened to the show, she found out about it, and sent the email. So that was cool.
Yeah, that's very cool. Well, it's Enrica, thanks for contacting us. And again, it's always great to hear from creators.
Well, Andy, you want to get into the February previews catalog?
Let's do that.
Now, before we get into the nitty-gritty of the solicits, let me preface by saying that on this month's episode where we're looking at previews, Andy, I'm going to have to use you as a crutch.
No problem.
But in a good way, and I should explain what I mean by that to our listeners, because they're what is he talking about? Andy actually does have a hard copy of previews in front of him. I usually do, but because of a family emergency that came up last week, I had to quickly leave town to visit my family in North Carolina. Now, I found out last night, my wife told me that my discount comic book service shipment that includes the February previews arrived yesterday.
Of course.
But that's in Texas, and I'm in North Carolina right now, so I do not have a copy. What I am going to be reading from is the PDF of the order form that you can get on Previews World. And for anyone who has ordered or has seen this order form on Previews World, they give you a list of everything that's in the catalog, no problem. The thing is, it's just the titles and then the publishers that the titles are listed under. So at least I know who publishes what. The thing is, the list that I have no solicits, I have no creator information. Obviously, I have no sample art, and I'm not even sure if the solicits listed on this order form are in the same order as they are in the catalog that you're looking at, Andy. So I may mention something about a title and then ask you to read the solicit or at least give me a sense of what it's about. Now, a lot of this stuff I've already looked up, but I may have forgotten some of that information.
No, that's fine. I'll be glad to help you out, Derek, as long as you don't mind the sound of some pages turning.
No, that's okay. We get that all the time on preview shows. So we usually start in the Dark Horse section. So, yes, we're starting there again because it's the first publisher listed in previews. And, Andy, where do you start if you have anything in Dark Horse?
Well, I know the page numbers won't really mean anything to you, but I'm starting, for our listeners who may have a catalog with them, I'm starting on page 52 with Department H, number 1.
Oh, okay.
Was that on your list?
Yes. Oh, and by the way, let me correct myself. This is how non-observant I am. I've just noticed I do have the page numbers on this order form. So,
oh, okay.
So I was okay. This is what's called flying by the seat of your pants and or being unprepared. But okay. So Department H, I did not look that one up. But what is that about?
Actually, Department H, it caught my eye because it's by Matt Kent. And Matt Kent's artwork is very distinctive, and there's a one sample page. And again, this title is called Department H number 1, and the way they have it spelled out is DEPT:H, so that it reads depth. And this is by Matt Kent, and actually his wife, Charlene, has done the cover. And there's a variant cover by Jeff Lemire, which looks pretty awesome as well. And the solicit reads, Mia is a special investigator hired to uncover possible sabotage taking place at a deep-sea research station. What she finds is a mind-blowing crime scene filled with suspects with terrible secrets, strange deep-sea creatures, and an impending flood. And, you know, this looks like, Derek, the type of thing that Matt Kent really, really excels in. Some mysterious things going on, sabotage, weird things going on, and in this case, having to do with a deep-sea research station. So I'm really, really excited about this. And this is the first, I'm assuming it's going to be an ongoing series and not a limited run. Actually, it does say ongoing. So I'm very excited about this.
See, Andy, this is one of the dangers of looking through the catalog, so to speak, only by the order form, because as I was going through everything, I completely overlooked Department H number 1, because had I noticed that this was a new title, a number 1 issue, I would have looked that up to see what it was about on the Dark Horse site, as I did with some of the other solicits that is in this month's catalog. But I overlooked it. So this is one of the reasons why I'm glad you have a hard copy of that catalog to make up for my slack.
I'm glad to help out. And, I get, and I think you do too, Derek. I think all of us, you, me, and Kunka included, we both get pretty excited, or all three get pretty excited anytime there's anything new by Matt Kent.
Right, yeah, which makes it even weirder that I completely overlooked that. So I'm glad that you pointed that out. Actually, the first thing that I noted in the catalog, and this is on page, since I know now that I have page listings, 54, this comes right after Department H. This is Neil Gaiman's How to Talk to Girls at Parties.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I had wondered if this was something that had been previously published elsewhere at another time, and this is just a new edition, hardcover edition of it. I don't think so, though. But you have the solicit there. So what do you find?
Sure. And this is written by Neil Gaiman with art by Fabio Moon and Gabriel Ba. Two teenage boys are in for a tremendous shock when they crash a party where the girls are far more than they appear. From Neil Gaiman, one of the most celebrated authors of our time, and award-winning artists Fabio Moon and Gabriel Ba, this sumptuous graphic novel is not to be missed. Now, they don't really tell you an awful lot about it, but there are some quotes from some other creators who have a few things to say about it. One is Kelly Sue DeConnick, who says, "How can something so strange and so beautiful also be so sad? Like a poem, a pattern, and a people whose world was swallowed by the sea, How to Talk to Girls at Parties is three things at once."
Wow. Yeah, and so because it is, the brothers, Fabio Ba and Gabriel, or Fabio Moon and Gabriel Ba, this has to be new, I would guess.
I would guess too, because it seems like if something like that had come out before, we would have known about it.
Exactly, but every now and again, one of Neil Gaiman's earlier, lesser known works or something that's out of print will come back into print by a particular publisher. So anyway, this has got everything going for it. It's got Gaiman. It's got Ba and Moon, so that's definitely something worth checking out.
Mm-hmm. We do have one sample page of art, which is in black and white, although it looks like the book is in full color. Again, we only get one page, but I think it gives us enough of a feel to get an idea of what we're getting into.
Okay. Now, I next have something on page 59. Do you have anything before that?
No, I also have 59.
Yeah, and this is another Matt Kent title. Mm-hmm. This is Poppy and the Lost Lagoon. In fact, the title is Poppy! And the Lost Lagoon. And the solicit reads, "At the age of 10, Poppy Pepperton is the greatest explorer since her grandfather Pappy. When a shrunken mummy head speaks, adventure calls Poppy and her sidekick guardian Colt Winchester across the globe in search of an exotic fish, along the way discovering clues to what happened to Pappy all those years ago." Now, this is written by both Matt Kent and Brian Hurt, and Brian Hurt is the artist on this. Matt Kent is the colorist. So this is an example of Matt Kent's writing, but not his art. His colors, but not his art. Mm-hmm. And so this looks really interesting, and I'm wondering from the sound of this if this might be something that you and Gwen could talk about on your Young Reader show.
Actually, I did, Derek, have it marked down as a distinct possibility for us to talk about in one of our Young Readers editions. This is an all-ages title, and you're right, it does have Matt Kent doing the writing and the coloring, and we only get one sample page, which looks like it may be like a double splash page, and it does look very Matt Kent-like, not so much in the art, which is a little bit more of a little bit more line drawing than we get from Matt Kent. But it is very, very similar to what he's done. And as far as I know, this is the first thing that Kent has done for young readers. I may be mistaken, but I think this is his first.
Huh, okay.
So that's exciting. We don't want to turn this into the Matt Kent show, but when you got Matt Kent, you must read Matt Kent.
It's starting out that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where do you go next?
The next thing I have is on page 63, and that is just a brief mention of Dark Horse Presents, because I know that you and Kunka have spoken about this quite a bit, and you never know when something really, really extraordinary is going to appear in Dark Horse Presents. I mean, it's consistently good. Mm-hmm. But you never know when you might make a discovery that will lead you into a new series or take you in a direction that you weren't planning on. So I think it's always worthwhile to take a look at Dark Horse Presents.
Right. Wow. And it's amazing. They're already up to issue number 21.
Yeah. I can't
or they
believe it.
will be in a couple of months. It's hard to believe. It just seemed like, I don't know, not even a year ago that we had the new Dark Horse Presents format. And that was kind of a big deal. They made it a little thinner, made it much more affordable. And in some ways, I think that, I don't know what it's done in terms of its sales numbers. I would guess it has helped, but that'd be something worth looking into. But I know that they, now in this most recent incarnation, and even before, have had just a number of great series and then standalone books that resulted from and originally appearing in Dark Horse Presents. So it's always a place to find good stuff, you're right. Now, I want to mention a couple things more in passing than anything. On the previous page on 62, are you familiar with Emily the Strange?
I know of it. I've not picked it up, but I know that it's very popular, especially in our library. We have a lot of people that read that.
Yeah, that's why I was going to ask. I wanted to mention this. I probably won't get it. I've got some Emily the Strange comics, but if people have been on and off over the years reading the various comic series featuring Emily the Strange, now apparently you can get the complete Emily the Strange, All Things Strange, and it's a hardcover. And it's listed here as $19.99, but I'm sure you can find a good discount through Discount Comic Book Service. Another thing I wanted to mention in passing, and this is on page 66, this is the art of Doug Sneed. And I'm not sure how you pronounce if it's Sneyd or Sneed, S-N-E-Y-D, but he is a famous cartoonist who did a lot of work for Playboy. And if you see the cover of this book, and if you've looked at Playboy at least once or twice since the 1960s, like some of us may have, I won't say which one of us, you will instantly...
or ones of us.
Yeah, you will instantly recognize his art, and you will know where he's from. And and this is really interesting. So you have some of his art from Playboy, and outside of the Playboy side of it, the angle... And I don't want to downplay that, but I'm not focusing on that. But outside of the Playboy angle, the sexual, he's a great artist.
He is a great artist. And, just looking from the front cover, you can see so much detail, so much, and one of the things that makes his art so good is the facial expressions. Mm-hmm. And just looking at the cover, you can see, you've got 8 different characters on that cover, and they all have unique facial expressions. And that's just the cover. So, yeah, this is definitely going to be worth taking a look at.
Exactly. Although, my guess is that much of his art, it's not the face that is the first place that most people will look, but we'll just leave it at that.
Right.
For now, at least. After that, I think I have only one other thing in Dark Horse.
The only other thing I have is just a brief stop on page 75.
Okay, so before that, I have something I wanted to mention on 71.
Okay.
And that is House of Penance, #1. And this looks really interesting. Peter Tomasi is the writer with art by Ian Bertram. The solicit is the Winchester House, famous for its original owner's bizarre compulsion to incorporate a multitude of architectural curiosities. But as the bereaved Sarah Winchester's workers toil on stairways to nothing and doors to nowhere, a mysterious stranger arrives, and he could make Sarah's demons all too real. So this seems really interesting. And in fact, there is on the Dark Horse site, which I just read that blurb from, because remember, I do not have the catalog. Mm-hmm. There is a brief endorsement from Scott Snyder, the writer of Witches. And so here you have the creator of one horror title writing a blurb for this new horror title. And this looks interesting. Plus, it's the work of Peter Tomasi, and this is one of 6, by the way.
Yeah, Derek, I'm glad you mentioned it, because this is one I just went by. But we do get one sample page of art, which looks amazing, and it's only just a few panels, but in those panels there's a lot going on. Again, the color and the detail is really, really really excellent. There's also a blurb from Garth Ennis who calls House of Penance Peter Tomasi's finest work to date.
Wow.
So that's pretty high praise.
So you say you have one other thing in Dark Horse.
Yeah, just a brief mention on page 75. The Astro Boy Omnibus Volume 4, and I can't believe they're up to Volume 4.
I know, jeez.
It seems like I just finished Volume 1 not too long ago. Is a great series. I need to get caught up on that. So, and especially, and Gwen and I talked about this on a Young Readers edition. If you have never read manga before, Astro Boy is a really good starting point. It's very reader friendly. It's not. Even though these are reprints from much older work, probably from the, late 50s and early 60s, it's very approachable. It still reads fresh. I highly recommend Astro Boy.
Okay, if that's all we have in Dark Horse, you want to move on to DC Vertigo.
Yes.
And I don't have anything in DC proper. Do you?
No, nothing in DC proper.
Yeah.
And just a couple of things in Vertigo.
Yeah, there are a few things to mention in Vertigo. First and foremost is a title, I guess you can call it an original graphic novel, if you like the term graphic novel, which I'm not that fond of. And this is Dark Knight, a true Batman story. And this has been getting a lot of press. Now, this is a Batman tale. So why is it in Vertigo? Well, it's a different take on the Batman franchise. I mean, here we have Paul Dini, who is the writer, and he's writing about an experience that he relatively recently suffered. And so that's where the true story part of this comes from. Now, Eduardo Riso does the art on this, but you have the solicit in front of you, so I'm sure that you can put it in better words with that solicit than I'm trying to describe it right now.
Well, I'll just read what's here. The Caped Crusader has been the all-abiding icon of justice and authority for generations. But in this surprising original graphic novel, we see Batman in a new light, as the savior who helps a discouraged man recover from a brutal attack that left him unable to face the world. In the 1990s, Eisner Award-winning writer Paul Dini had a flourishing career writing the hugely popular Batman the Animated Series and Tiny Toon Adventures. Walking home one evening, he was jumped and viciously beaten within an inch of his life. His recovery process was arduous, hampered by the imagined antics of the villains he was writing for television, including the Joker, Harley Quinn, and the Penguin. But despite how bleak his circumstances were, or perhaps because of it, Dini also always imagined Batman at his side during his darkest moments. Dark Knight, a true Batman story, is the harrowing and eloquent autobiographical tale of Dini's courageous struggle to overcome a truly desperate situation. It is a Batman story like none other, and one that will truly resonate with fans.
Man, that's a long-ass solicit.
You know, it really is, but I think it's a really important one to give readers a feel that, like it says, this is not your typical Batman story, and it definitely has a personal connection with Dini. So, from reading the solicit, even people who might, be a little fed up with Batman, who I can't imagine who that might be, would still be interested in this story. I'm definitely interested in it.
Right. And I guess the thing about the solicit comment that I made, with DC proper, their solicits are usually very short and sweet. They really don't tell you much of anything. And with Vertigo, they're a little better. You get much more detail, or at least a little bit more detail. But this time around, when you were reading that, I thought, oh my God, really? I mean, that's like taking up a whole page, it seems. But it makes sense, as you pointed out, that they need to point out that this is not your usual Batman narrative, that there's something else going on here. So they needed to create that context.
Yeah. And, and Derek, I'll confess, right here, I get fed up with a lot of superhero stuff. I really don't read that much of it anymore because, so much of it is either stuff we've seen before or, it's work for hire. And I just can't, really be invested in it that much. But this is a completely different type of tale. Apparently this is deeply personal. And I'm excited to see something like this.
Yeah. Now, we're going to get listeners who are superhero fans writing in about your work for hire comment.
Well, I mean, that's what a lot of it is.
Yeah. I just mentioned that. At one point, and this is about a couple of years ago, Kunkka made some comment about, it was really disparaging of whatever was going on in DC at the time. And then we had someone write us and take Andy to task. And I can't remember the details, but I just remember the experience of getting that email. But
well, and I'm just saying it for me. I'm not saying it for other people. I don't read that much of it anymore.
Yeah.
And that's that.
Yeah. That's the one brand new title coming out from Vertigo that I wanted to point out. But the other things that I was going to mention in the Vertigo section are collections of already published material, because this month we get some of the first volumes, some of the first trade collections of the latest wave of those 12 Vertigo titles. And so we're going to get volume number 1 of Art Ops. We're also going to get volume 1 of Unfollow. And, both of those, Kunkka and I discussed, we really liked, especially Unfollow, a few weeks ago when we did a Vertigo Spotlight. But the one I'm even more excited about is the trade for Twilight Children. And that was that 4-issue series with Gilbert Hernandez writing and Darwin Cook doing the art. So I'm glad that this is out, although I do have to say I'm a little surprised. I remember when Kunkka and I did that Vertigo Spotlight a few weeks ago, we were speculating that because of the creators, because it's Hernandez and Cook, that they would not take the trade paperback route for the collected Twilight Children, but something like a deluxe hardcover edition. Mm-hmm. But that's not the case. It's trade paperback, according to this order form that I have.
Yeah, and I missed this when it came out individually, so I'm very excited about this. And also Dave Stewart is the colorist for this title. Mm-hmm. So, you've got 3, grand slammers right there.
Yeah. And, this is one of those titles that I was most excited by of that wave of 12 that they began publishing back in October. I'm a little disappointed that this is not going to be a hardcover, but hey, if you like trades, then this is definitely right up your alley. And especially if you didn't read the original 4 issues, Andy, like you.
Right.
Now, was there something else you wanted to mention in the Vertigo section?
Just that, and I've lost the page. It's been out for a while, but they had some deluxe editions are being printed now of DMZ, and actually this is on page 142.
Oh yeah,
and they're just reissuing the trade edition. So if you've missed DMZ Book 1, it's coming out again pretty soon. Highly recommend that.
Yeah, exactly. I think that Vertigo does a really good job with their hardbound deluxe editions, and there have been some of those that I have gotten. The 100 Bullets, Scalped, DMZ, Why the Last Man. I opted not to get Sweet Tooth. For whatever reasons, I just decided not to. But DMZ, but you're right. This is the first book in paperback form, and that's what Vertigo usually does. Is there's the original series, then later on there is the deluxe hardbound, and then after that they'll do the paperback books. So if you don't want to pay or you missed out, if you don't want to pay for or missed out on the hardbound editions, then you got the trade here for DMZ Book 1.
Yep, and it's a great way to experience that series, which is an outstanding series.
Exactly, and this will not be the only time we mention Brian Wood today.
That's true.
Right. So you want to go to IDW?
Yes, and I don't have very much in IDW. In fact, I think I only have one item.
There's one. Well, actually, I think there are three, but there are two that I wanted to mention. Well, not necessarily in passing. I guess we could talk a bit about it. I'm doing this one more for Kunkka than for anything. But on page 158, they have issue number 1 of Micronauts. Mm-hmm. And we learned, I don't know, last month, maybe it was the month before, that IDW is going to be putting out a new series based on both Micronauts and ROM.
Right.
And Andy has mentioned those several times in the past, something that's a blast from his youthful past. So now we have Micronauts number 1 that's being solicited. And then on page 164, and you have the solicit in front of you, so you could tell me more about this. This looked interesting because I think it's from the creators of Dave, and this is Hot Damn, issue number 1 of 5.
Yeah, I noticed that too. I didn't mark it, but even though I like Dave quite a bit, the solicit reads, "The masterminds of Dave reunite with Hot Damn, and they're taking you straight to hell. Hard living catches up to Teddy, and eternal damnation awaits. But it's nothing like the good book tells you. Hell is a therapy session you can never leave." And so, yeah, that's number 1 of 5. And by Ryan Ferrier and Valentine Raymond.
And the only other thing I have in the IDW section is actually a top shelf title.
Okay.
Do you have anything before that? Before page 187?
No, actually, I have something a little bit after that.
Okay. This is Apocrypha Now, which is a great title.
Yeah.
And this is by Mark Russell and Shannon Wheeler, the same team that brought us God is Disappointed in You. Now, are you familiar with God is Disappointed in You?
I haven't read it, but I'm familiar with it.
Okay, I think it's really good because basically what Mark Russell does with Shannon Wheeler doing the art is he takes in God is Disappointed in You. He takes both the Old and the New Testaments and he encapsulates briefly and humorously what each of the books are. And he does it in a way that's humorous, but at the same time, I think, respectful of the text. So it's not a parody or anything like that, but it's trying to get to the bare bones of the story and to do so in a readable, quick in and out, and humorous way. And a good part of the humor is based on Shannon Wheeler's art. And if you don't know Shannon Wheeler, then shame on you. Among other things he's done is Too Much Coffee Man, so definitely check that out if you don't know about it already. Although, who hasn't heard of Too Much Coffee Man?
Hopefully everyone has.
Yeah, but here we have Apocrypha Now. So if God is Disappointed in You is their take on the Old and New Testaments, Apocrypha Now takes things outside of the canonical Bible. For instance, the Midrash, the Apocrypha, the Gnostic Gospels, and a few others. So this is them returning to what they did previously, but with the non-canonical biblical texts.
Yeah, cool.
And so what do you have in IDW?
Well, Derek, as you know, I'm a huge fan of IDW's Library of American Comics. Mm-hmm. And they have a new one coming out. The Library of American Comics Essentials presents King Features Volume 1, Crazy Cat, 1934, the famous George Harriman strip. And that is, I guess it's all of the 1934 strips. And this is one of those publications, IDW, part of their Library of American Comics line. The Essentials series presents one strip per page. So it's kind of an oddly shaped book. It's 4 1/4 inches by 12 inches. So it looks a little funny on your shelf. But so basically you're getting one daily strip per page. And that's a great series. There have been so many great ones out of there. There was a great Alley Oop volume. There were some other ones, Baron Bean, and some others that are escaping me right now. So that's a really great series, and I'm glad to see that being printed.
Wow. You know, yet another example of me not getting the lowdown because I don't have the catalog. I didn't even think about that because on this order form from Previews World, this is listed as LOAC, which I know what that is. Essentials Presents King Features Hardcover, Volume 1. There's nothing in there about Crazy Cat.
Really?
Had I seen the name Crazy Cat, I would have definitely looked that up and highlighted that as something to discuss. But I thought that maybe this was just another King Features volume because, last year Dean Mullaney came out with that really nice big 100 year anniversary issue of King Feature Comics. So I thought it may be something along those lines because Crazy Cat is mentioned nowhere on this order form.
Oh, that's too bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, now they do have a little banner that says part of King Features 100 year anniversary celebration.
Okay.
And they do have like one sample page. But that's really weird because Crazy Cat it dominates the book cover.
Wow.
But that's weird.
And Crazy Cat is like comics canon, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. We were talking about biblical canon earlier. Now, comics canon, Crazy Cat. No apocrypha there.
No apocrypha.
And that's all that I think both you and I have in the IDW section, right?
Yep. I go to Image next.
So we mosey on over to Image. And the aforementioned Brian Wood is there on page 196 with Black Road.
Yeah, and I'm really excited about Black Road #1, not only because it's Brian Wood, but it's Brian Wood reunited with Gary Brown, who also worked on The Massive with Wood. So, and just the brief solicit here is, meet Magnus the Black, neither clean nor sober, neither Christian nor pagan, but a man true to his word. When a ranking official under his care is brutally murdered, he's prepared to hunt the killers to the frozen tip of Norway. Religious war be damned.
Wow. I know that on the On Location show that I recorded about a week and a half ago, my local shop in Plano, Collected Comics in Plano, the store manager mentioned this title because she not only likes Brian Wood, but also she likes Viking narrative. And, Northlanders is what he did several years ago with Vertigo. And so she mentioned that this is one that she's really looking forward to.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it too. I'm a pretty big Brian Wood fan, and also it lists other books that Wood has done: The Couriers, Mara, Starve, Volume 1, which has not been out that long, and The Tourist. So there's lots of Brian Wood for you to investigate.
Yep. I have not even made my way all the way through Rebels yet.
Oh, I haven't either.
Yeah. So another title coming out of Image to look forward to, and this is on page 200, and this is Fix, or The Fix. This is written by Nick Spencer with art by Steve Lieber. So that's another power team.
Mm-hmm.
And from the look of it, it says The Fix is a story of the crooked cops, scheming mobsters, and corrupt politicians that run Los Angeles, and the sex toy that can bring them all down. Okay, right there, they have my attention. Oh, and the hero is a drug-sniffing beagle called Pretzels. Bad people do bad things to each other in this frantic, outrageous, sometimes off-putting new caper that gives nod to classic crime comics like Criminal and 100 Bullets.
Yeah, and there's a pretty generous sampling of art here. We actually get 3 entire pages, sample pages, and they're not tiny; they're full size of what this is going to be like. This looks like it might be a good crime noir type of title, and it really does look promising.
Yeah. So I'm definitely on board for that as well. Where else do you go in Image? Because you can always count on quite a number of good things coming out of Image.
Actually, if you turn to page 204, there's another new miniseries, and it's called Aloha, Hawaiian Dick.
Mm-hmm.
And this is actually, I think I missed the first time that this came out, or not this is a continuation, but the original Hawaiian Dick, I missed that.
By Clay.
Yeah, did you read that?
Yeah, but it's been a long time. And in fact, when I first saw this, I wondered, because I just recently, and I think it just recently ended, but I was part of a Kickstarter campaign on Clay's Hawaiian Dick where they were collecting some of the past Hawaiian Dick narratives, and the collection is called, I think it's Great Big Hawaiian Dick. So, boy, I mean, we got something going here. You know, there's the Playboy reference, there's Big Hawaiian Dick, and maybe we have to rate this explicit.
Yeah, I think the big red E may show up on
this one. But I wondered, it's like, oh, wait a minute now, this doesn't have anything to do with that Kickstarter, but apparently it does not, because this is a new miniseries. This is one of 4.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I want to go back and revisit the first one, because I didn't know about this, but this sounds, being a film noir fan, this says this is a critically acclaimed tropical noir series,
right?
Returns, and there's 1, 2. There's one sample page that looks really, really cool, and it's got like a the first panel just says 1972, and then it gives you a few sample panels, and it looks kind of psychedelic, which looks pretty cool. I really like the artwork, and I'm not really familiar with Jacob Wyatt, so he's a new artist for me. But just based on the theme, it being a noir title, and the artwork, this looks really fun.
Well, now now this is still B. Clay Moore, right?
Yeah, it's B. Clay Moore and Jacob
Wyatt. Okay. Yeah. Oh, in fact, I just looked up the Kickstarter campaign, and the book is called Great Big Hawaiian Dick, 100-page hardcover graphic novel. And this... Oh, it's unpublished stories. And so this is not printing some of the earlier stuff. I was wrong. Because I saw that also in previews this month, the first 2 volumes of Hawaiian Dick is resolicited.
Yeah. Okay, so it was 2 volumes. The first one's called Bird of Paradise, BYRD, and the volume 2 is called The Last Resort.
Right. But so now there seems to be Hawaiian Dick everywhere.
Careful.
Yeah. Okay, and I think I know where you go next, my friend.
You do?
Yeah, because what comes soon after that? We're talking about crime noir.
Mm-hmm. Let me see.
Criminal, 10th anniversary special edition. This is on page 206.
Can you believe it's the 10th anniversary of Criminal?
I can believe it, yeah. It does seem about 10 years ago.
I don't, boy, it seems like it was awful soon.
Yeah.
But I'm glad it's here.
Yeah, because, we had last year that special edition of Criminal that came out, that one-shot, which was the first new Criminal that we had in quite a while. And at around that same time, Image started to publish trade paperback editions of the original Criminal series, which was originally published by Marvel.
Right.
Yeah. And I think in their Icon imprint. So, yeah, there's been, I don't know if you want to call it a revival of Criminal, but to a point, perhaps so. And I think part of this from about a year and a half ago, which is, I think, what we started seeing traction here with Criminal again, is the fade out of Brubaker's Fade Out. And so, because this is, in line with that in many ways. So, and not only is there a Criminal 10th Anniversary Special Edition, but there's also, as there was with the Criminal Special Edition one-shot, a 10th Anniversary Special Deadly Edition magazine size.
And, every time they do that, I have to get those.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah, this is really exciting. And again, for people that like noirish or crime comics and have not experienced Criminal yet, oh man, you've got some great stuff in store for you. These are just excellently told and illustrated stories. It just doesn't get much better than these guys, Brubaker and Phillips.
Right. And in fact, Ed Brubaker will come up later in this episode.
Mm-hmm.
Although not the writings, not a new work of his, but I'll tell you about that as we get toward the end of the show. Now, where do you go next in the image section?
There is one that Gwen and I might consider for the Young Readers edition on page 232.
Oh, before you mention that, on page 209, there's another, I guess this is a one-shot from Chew. This is Chew, Demon Chicken Pollo. And even though I've fallen behind on my Chew reading, I'm a big fan of Chew, and every now and again when they do these special one-shots, I like to check them out as well.
Yep. I liked Chew when I first started reading it, and I think I probably just overdosed on it.
Yeah.
And so I haven't read it in quite a while. I probably should go back to it. But yeah, this looks like a fun one-shot. Or is it a one-shot? No.
I would guess so, because Agent Pollo was it says number 1, but it was only a one-shot.
Okay.
I mean, they're calling it number 1, but I think for all practical purposes, it's a one-shot.
Okay. Yeah. Well, actually, on the cover, it doesn't. There's not a number.
Oh, yeah. I'm looking at this order form.
Yeah.
So you say there's a title later on that you and Gwen may consider?
Yeah, it might be fun, and it's on page 232, and it is Camp Midnight, original graphic novel by Steven Siegel.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
Yeah, and Jason Adam Katzenstein. And that looks like it might be fun, a summer camp from hell type of story. And, that might be something that we take a look at on the Young Readers edition.
Now, if I'm not mistaken, I think that Camp Midnight was solicited previously.
Oh, if it was, I missed it.
Yeah. And it may have been back in the summer, maybe. But I remember seeing that before, but it's definitely coming out in 2016.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know if it was just an early solicit or they moved it back or what the situation was, but it does look interesting. And the only other things that I was going to mention in the image section were some of the deluxe hardbound editions of some of their titles that are coming out or solicited in this month's catalog. I think two of the ones that really stand out to me are, and this is on page 234, the Airboy Deluxe Edition, and on 238, We Stand on Guard Deluxe Edition. And both of these, it just seems to make sense to me. Since they're limited series, I think that Airboy was 4 issues and Stand on Guard was 6. I expected there to be a deluxe hardcover edition for We Stand on Guard because, after all, this is Brian K. Vaughan we're talking about here. But I was wondering if they were going to do a trade or a deluxe hardcover edition of Airboy, which I really liked, and they're doing it, so that's good. I'm really impressed. So I was disappointed that the collection of Twilight Children was trade paperback, but I'm pleased that the collection of Airboy is a deluxe hardcover.
Yeah, and like you said, the We Stand on Guard is going to be a deluxe hardcover. It is not available, at least not now, in trade paperback. So if you want to get that collected, you'll have to get the hardcover, which will definitely be worth it.
Exactly. And another hardcover that I wanted to mention is also solicited on page 238, and this is Wicked and Divine, hardcover volume 1, year 1. And, this is something that Image has been doing for a while now, and I feel kind of mixed about it. On the one hand, I really do like the fact that with, not all, but with some of their properties, or some of their titles, they eventually come out with hardcover editions that collects, let's say, maybe 2 or more trade paperback collections. And that's really good. I mean, they've done this most notably with Saga. Mm-hmm. They did it with Rat Queens. They did it with Southern Bastards. I really do like that because I think most of these titles very much deserve these nice, larger, hardbound editions. the potential drawback for that is if you do have a liking for those hardbound deluxe editions, and then you get the trade paperbacks, unsure of whether or not there will be a hardcover edition coming out. If you're like me and have been getting the trade paperbacks of Wicked and Divine, and then you see that a nice hardcover is coming out, oops.
Yeah. It's a bit of a crapshoot. I mean, and I kind of got into that with Saga. When I was buying the trades of Saga, I thought, eventually they're probably going to come up with a hardback edition, which they did. But I've refrained from buying subsequent trade paperbacks because I'm waiting for the next hardcover. But, there's no way to know definitely one way or the other whether they're going to come out with a deluxe.
Exactly. And, this is something that is somewhat akin, I guess, to trade waiting, right? Mm-hmm. Do you get the individual issues of a particular title, whether it's an ongoing or a limited series, or do you wait for the trade? And that, it's understandable that one would do that if they can wait for the completed story. On the other hand, it's not good economically for the creators.
Yeah.
And so you have something similar going on here. It's like, well, do you get the trades, or do you wait, gambling that maybe there's going to be a deluxe hardcover edition? So, it's the same story regardless. But I know what I've done in the past with I think with both Rat Queens and with Black Science, is the trades that I originally had, I ended up selling and then getting, making, several bucks, and so that's great. And then getting the deluxe edition.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a problem, but, we can overcome it.
Exactly. Hey, if that's as bad as our problems get, in our Western privileged, white guy lives, then right. I think we're doing pretty darn good.
We are doing pretty good. And Derek, I wanted to mention just a couple of things that are coming out in trade paperback. I didn't know if you were going to mention these. On page 235, we have a trade paperback volume 1 of The Goddamned, which we actually looked at the first issue of that a while back. So that's coming out, and that's actually one of Image's famous $9.99 entry points. Another one that I missed called Limbo by Dan Waters and Casper Vingard. Looks interesting, and I missed that. They have others too: Ringside, Savior Volume 1, Symmetry Volume 1, in addition to the other ones that we mentioned. So there's a lot of good starting points if you're an Image Comics fan.
Right. So do you have anything else in Image?
Just one other thing, and because we both liked Invisible Republic so much, the first trade. The second trade is coming out from Gabriel Hardman and Karina Becko. And I know Invisible Republic was in my top 10 of last year. And Derek, I think it was in yours too, wasn't it? Or was
it was on my honorable mention
list. Right. So, yeah, very excited to see the second volume of this on the way.
Yeah. Yeah, and they were fun people to talk to as well.
Yeah.
So after Image, there's Marvel, and unless there's something unusual going on, I'm assuming that you don't have anything in Marvel, just as I don't have anything.
Nothing.
And again, nothing against Marvel. It's just that 99.9% of what they do is the superhero, and even though we may like, or at least some of us may like the superhero on the Comics Alternative, as part of our mission statement, we do not talk about mainstream superheroes.
That's right.
As our listeners well know. So in the back half of the catalog, once we get past the premium publishers, I first go to a title in the Action Lab Entertainment section on page 262. And I just want to mention this in passing because we've already talked about it on a previous preview show with issue number 1. But this is issue number 3 of House of Montresor. And I mentioned that just because Enrica Jang was kind enough to send us an email. So issue number 3 of House of Montresor is being solicited this month. And the fourth one is going to be solicited next month, and it's 4 issues of that miniseries.
Cool.
And that, again, that's on page 262. Now, where do you go in the back section?
I go next to 267.
Okay, because in the Aftershock comics.
Are you there?
Yeah, in fact, 266, 267, and 268.
Okay, yeah. And Derek, I was looking through this, and I haven't looked at a previews catalog in print for a while. So I saw this, and I was like, Aftershock. And I realized, Aftershock was just launched last year in April. So it's not even a year old. And
right.
Of course, Mike Martz is the editor-in-chief. But the first thing that grabbed my attention was this new title by Ray Fawkes called Jackpot. And this really, really looks cool. Of course, anything by Ray Fawkes I'm going to probably take a look at. And this looks like a really good comic about con artists and scams and maybe even a little bit of noir thrown in there. And again, it's Ray Fawkes, so the writing is going to be just excellent. Mm-hmm. And it's only $1.99.
But they have two other number ones solicited as well. On 266, you have Rough Riders number one, and then on 268, Black Eyed Kids number one.
Yeah, both of those look pretty interesting as well.
And what is the creative team on those two titles?
The Rough Riders is Adam Glass and Pat Olive. Mm-hmm. And Black Eyed Kids, and they have BEK, Black Eyed Kids, is Joe Pruitt and Simon Kudransky. I think I'm saying that right.
Yeah. And, one of the things, it's interesting to hear you preface your mention of Jackpot by saying it's the first time you've seen previews hard copy in a while. One of the things that Aftershock, which you're right, is a new company from last year, has been doing over the past several months, is they have these sections in the previews catalog that are really visually striking. And so it gets your attention that way. And then when you start looking at the solicits, another way that they get your attention is, not only the sample art, cover and otherwise, but also the creators who were associated with that. Now, you mentioned Ray Fawkes as one. Brian Azzarello, Amanda Connor, Jimmy Palmiotti, Garth Ennis. I mean, Andy and I know, have been amazed at the stuff that has been coming out, or at least so far been solicited. And in fact, over the past month or so, the first wave of Aftershock comics have just come out. It seems really exciting. They're doing some different things with creators who have worked for the mainstream and then otherwise. So with some of these titles, it just strikes me that these could be things that could come out of, let's say, Vertigo or maybe Marvel's Icon. But for whatever reasons, however they've done it, the Aftershock folk now have these big name, and even not so big name, but still impressive creators coming out with a lot of these new titles. So I'm really wanting to do a publisher spotlight on Aftershock comics before they get too many titles out. And I have been in touch with the people over there about this, and I've gotten a response from them. So I think that this is something that we're going to be able to do in the near future.
Yeah, and that would be really cool. I'm really looking forward to picking some of these up because, like I said, I must have just missed it when I was going through the digital previews catalog. These really look cool.
Right.
And not just those. There are several that are, like you said, that are have been out for a while, and they're on like issue number 3 or issue number 4 or 5.
Mm-hmm. Well, Andy, after the Aftershock Comics section, I next go to Alternative Comics, and these solicits are on page 272 and 273. And, for almost a year now, since Alternative Comics reached that agreement with a variety of other smaller publishers where they will be the distributor of their work, and these are presses like Hick and Hock Publications, Floating World, Revival House, Study Group, Hang Die Editions, Manx Media. They've been having quite a number of solicits in each episode or in each volume of the previews catalog. And here, God, we have quite a number of them. One that really stands out, I guess the first one, is Chainmail Bikini, an anthology of women gamers.
Yeah.
And so that looks really good.
Yeah, it does.
And then they also have number 2 issues of both Hog Tales and Inkbrit Ink Brick. And, it wasn't that long ago that I got my copy of issue number 1 of Ink Brick, which is described, and I'm assuming that the solicit mentions this, that the one that you have on 272, that this is like comics poetry.
Right.
Yeah. And I got my issue number 1 not too long ago, which means it wasn't solicited that too long ago. But when I got my issue, I saw that the original pub date was, I think, 2014. So now we have issue number 2 of Ink Brick solicited. And then Hawd Tales, Hawd Tales. I read issue number 1 and I thought it was pretty good. And so now we have issue number 2. And who's the creator of Hawd Tales?
That is T. Limbs, Limbs,
Mm-hmm.
and it looks like T. Limbs does everything.
Yeah, he does. And so, that's an interesting title, definitely worth checking out. Another title that is impressive, and I've talked about this a number of times on the show, is the anthology Irene. Mm-hmm. And, Dakota McFadzean and Andy Warner are just 2 of the 3 people, and I can't remember the third one, who is behind the Irene crew. And third guy at Irene, please forgive me for not remembering your name, but that's a great anthology. Although I think I remember that Irene 6 was available at SPX last year.
I'm pretty sure it was. I didn't pick it up, but
Mm-hmm.
I think I saw it there.
Yeah, because I have a copy back home. We also have the latest issue of Porcelino's King Cat Comics and Stories, mm-hmm. which is always good.
Yeah.
And then Lou. Now, you have the solicit for Lou there in front of you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Lou is a comic by Melissa Mendez. And Lou is a 11-year-old tomboy growing up in a small working-class town in New England in the 1990s. And one summer it becomes clear that her brother Eddie's boss at the pizza shop is mixed in with some unsavory characters. Things become precarious after Eddie's boss vanishes. And
So
that's a black and white 160-page graphic novel.
Mm-hmm. Another one that I'm really interested in is Zach Soto's Secret Voice number 3. Now, Andy, if you remember, I think it was one of the last webcomic episodes you did with me. Mm-hmm. We looked at a variety of study group webcomics, and Secret Voice was one of those.
Yeah, and I'm really glad to see these being picked up. I saw number 2 when it came out, but I didn't get number 1, and number 3 is, I guess, the newest one. Yeah, and I remember such a great, we had a great time discussing that and a great time reading that title too. I really like Zach Soto's work, and Secret Voice is just a insane comic which everybody should read.
Yeah, it is. And also it's worth mentioning that Zach Soto, I think he's the mastermind behind Study Group.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So there's that. And then one other one that is solicited in the alternative comic section, and this is Corey Lewis's Sun Bakery number 1. And this is described as a one-man Shonen Jump-esque comic anthology from Shark Knife creator Corey Lewis. So it says each 48-page issue is jam-packed with robo-space adventure, paranormal skateboarding, breakdancing, and social swordplay. Now, I wonder what social swordplay is as opposed to other kinds of swordplay.
Not quite sure.
Again, you and I think we're still planning at some point soon, I hope, to do a publisher spotlight on alternative comics. But we just need to make the arrangement with the people at Alternative Comics.
Yep. Looking forward to that when it happens. Hopefully it'll be soon.
Because before you know it, they'll just have so many titles out that we can't talk about all of them. So where do you go next in the catalog?
The next thing I go to is on page 300.
Okay.
So do you have anything before that?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention this more in passing, or maybe as an observation. This is in the Avatar Press section on page 298, and this is Alan Moore's Hypothetical Lizard, the complete box set. Now, I'm curious about this, and this is retailing for $69.99. I am not familiar with the original Hypothetical Lizard, but from what I've read, it's something that I feel like should have read by now. In reading about what it is. But, I didn't read the original, so I don't know if I want to spend almost $70 for the complete box set, but this is definitely something worth mentioning.
And, if you do want to get this for $70, the solicit also says that it's limited to just 100 sets. So this could be something that goes pretty quickly.
Wow. Well, if it's limited to just 100 sets, I would assume it'd be more than $70 then.
Yeah, I would too. And it says it's a set of 19 books, which has the regular, the wraparound, and the convention covers, and as well as the tarot and platinum foil covers.
Oh,
so yeah, it's quite a bit in there for $70, especially if they're only going to print 100 sets.
Yeah. Well, Avatar is known for doing like a gajillion different covers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And, there are a lot of people, I don't necessarily go for that, but there are a lot of people who do like that.
Yeah.
So okay, you're on page 300?
Yeah, and it's just in passing that Big Planet retrofit their Comics Blue graphic novel anthology.
Yes.
Is definitely going to be worth picking up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in my book, anything that Big Planet Retrofit comes out with is worth picking up.
Yep.
So, because I had marked that as well. Where do you go next? Do you have anything in Boom Studios?
No, I don't have anything until Dynamite on 340.
Yeah, I'm the same way. Usually there's maybe at least one thing in Boom that I would want to point out, but from at least this order form that I'm looking at, nothing seemed to jump out at me. So I don't have anything until we get to Dynamite as well. So what do you want to mention in Dynamite?
I go to 340 and Miss Fury, #1.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. This looks like a fun title, and if people are not familiar with Miss Fury, it was originally a comic strip back in the 40s, I believe, a female superhero, and those strips are fun, but it seems like a lot of those strips, Miss Fury is not in costume. She's solving these mysteries just basically in street clothes, and she doesn't really appear in costume that much, at least in the volume that I got. But they're still fun stories. And again, this is our friend of the show, Karina Bekcho, is writing this, and Jonathan Lau is the artist. And we don't get very much sample art, but what we get looks really, really cool.
Yeah. Now, I think that's worth checking out. Right before that, though, or a little bit before that, on page 331, there's something that I wanted to mention, and that is Gold Key Alliance #1. In fact, Andy, as you were speaking, did you hear a brief, quick noise?
I did hear something.
You know what it was?
No.
Okay. I went to do a search on, just real quick Google search on Gold Key Alliance, issue #1. And I found an article on it on Bleeding Cool. And curse you, Bleeding Cool, they do something that I absolutely hate, is when you go to their website, they have an advertisement video that automatically plays. It doesn't give you the option. In fact, in talking with my students about digital website design, which is one of the things I teach, one of the things that we've talked about, and everybody believes this, their pet peeves is a video that automatically plays. Well, apparently the quote-unquote good folks at Bleeding Cool know how to really piss off browsers on the web by including those things. So curses, or actually, let me just say, damn you, Bleeding Cool. But anyway, I'm looking at their write-up on Gold Key Alliance, and one of the reasons why I wanted to mention that outside of my brief tirade on Bleeding Cool is that in the Gold Key Alliance series now, we're going to bring together what we had started to see with the original Gold Key series from about almost 2 years back. Bringing together Turok, Magnus Robot Fighter, Solar Man of Action, these various characters from Gold Key, they're bringing them together now in this one title. So if you like those other comics, then you may like this.
Yeah, that would probably be a fun one to take a look at. I'll be honest, I have not looked at the newer incarnations of these characters. Dr. Spectre, Solar, Magnus. But, this might be a good jumping on point.
Yes.
So I may have to pick this up.
And I go next to 358 in Dover Publications. Do you have anything before that?
That's where I go as well.
So you're probably going to highlight Murder by Remote Control.
Yes. And, I was not familiar with this. And, of course, Dover Publications publishes a lot of older things. And, just looking at this, Derek, you're probably familiar with it, right?
No, I'm not. But the original book came out in 1986.
Oh, okay.
And so it came out from Ballantine, which is interesting, because here, 1980s were a time, this time especially, when you have a lot of titles coming out to get a lot of attention for comics, like Mouse, like Watchmen, like The Dark Knight Returns. And this comes out at around the same time, but doesn't get near the press. So I definitely want to get this one. This is written by, and I need to make sure I pronounce the name correct, or this is by Paul Kirschner. This is designed and illustrated by Paul Kirschner, but it's based on a novel, a mystery novel by Jan Willem van der Wettering.
Did
that sound okay?
That sounds okay to me. I'm not
Yeah.
sure how it sounds to Vettering.
Yeah. But yeah, this does look like a great crime comic, but it's one that's been around for a while. And one of the great things about Dover is that they're bringing back into print a lot of these older comics from, a variety of different publishers in the past.
Yeah. And this really does look like it's a lot of fun. And Vettering does write a series of mysteries, prose mysteries, called Amsterdam Cops. So he's very familiar with the murder mystery territory. And the art is by Paul Kirschner, who's done a lot of work at Marvel and a lot of work at heavy metal through the years.
Exactly. So next, I think in line is Drawn and Quarterly.
Mm-hmm. Right below that.
Yes, and we can always expect great things from Drawn and Quarterly. And this month in particular is a cause for celebration for me because of the new Chester Brown book, Mary Wept Over the Feet of Jesus.
Yeah, this looks like a really, really interesting book. And Derek, I have not read very much of Chester Brown, so I don't know, if this would be a good starting point for people like me that haven't read much. But it's got a very interesting premise.
Yeah. Now, you have the solicit in front of you, and I don't know if it's the same one that I'm looking at on Amazon. It says, Mary Wept Over the Feet of Jesus is the retelling in comics form of 9 biblical stories that present Chester Brown's fascinating and startling thesis about biblical representations of prostitution. Brown weaves a connecting line between Bathsheba, Ruth, Rahab, Tamar, Mary of Bethany, and the Virgin Mother. He reassesses the Christian moral code by examining the cultural implications of the Bible's representations of sex work.
Yeah.
Again, more sex on the Comics Alternative.
More sex on the Comics Alternative, yeah. And another one that deals with biblical issues that we addressed earlier in another title.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm really, really interested in taking a look at this. Again, I'm not that familiar with Chester Brown's work, and I know, shame on me, I should go back and read, as much of his as possible. But this looks like a very intriguing title.
Oh, yeah, it is. And so, and I know you say you're not familiar with much of his work. Have you read any other Chester Brown?
I want to say that a long time ago I read Ed the Happy Clown, but
okay.
It's been so long. I really need to read it again because I don't remember that much about it.
Yeah, Ed the Happy Clown is a classic of his, but it's gone through 2 or 3 different versions, and that's an interesting story in and of itself. But I think that's one definitely to check out. I think my first experience with Chester Brown was what was later collected in I Never Liked You. And that one also, and as we usually have in the Drawn in Quarterly section, whenever they have 1 or 2 new titles, then they'll resolicit a lot of the previous work from those artists. And so we do have a resolicit of Ed the Happy Clown and I Never Liked You, and Louis Riel, a comic strip biography. But we don't get one for The Playboy, which is another autobiographical work of his, like I Never Liked You. So I think all of those are definitely worth reading if you want to get to know Chester Brown. But specific to Mary Wept Over the Feet of Jesus, what I would strongly recommend that you read first is his book from a few years ago, Paying for It. Now, do you know what that's about?
I do. Yeah, and actually that one is resolicited as well.
Yes, and the reason I'm mentioning that, for those who may not be aware, Paying for It is Chester Brown. It's not necessarily, I wouldn't call it a straight-out autobiography, although it definitely has autobiographical elements, but I think it's more of maybe a treatise, if you want to look at it that way, on prostitution and looking at the moral implications, whether this is good or whether this is bad. And in fact, his friend Seth becomes someone that he's in dialogue with, especially in the appendix at the back, going back and forth about the implications of Chester's feelings about prostitution. So Paying for It, I think, it's not only an ambitious, but it's a fascinating work that looks at something that people would immediately think of as dismissive, right? Prostitutes. But I think he brings a very measured, intellectual mindset to this phenomena that may put off a lot of readers. And apparently Mary Wept Over the Feet of Jesus is going to be taking some of these interests of Brown's into the Bible. And Chester Brown also has a history of representing biblical figures in his comics, because in his earlier series Yummy Fur, where Ed the Happy Clown was originally serialized, he did stories. I don't think either of them were completed, on both Matthew and Mark, I think. So he's interested in biblical figures. He's interested in the role of prostitution in society, especially from a historical perspective. And so all of this is coming together in the perfect storm, which is Mary Wept Over the Feet of Jesus.
Well, I definitely want to check that out, and probably, as you mentioned, some of his earlier works as well. Yeah.
Another thing that I'm really looking forward to in the Drawn in Quarterly section is Brecht Evans's Panther.
Yes.
Yeah. If you're familiar with the work of Brecht Evans, he has done, among other things, The Making of and The Wrong Place. So here we have a new work. And the way that it's described is, I'm reading from Amazon, Christine lives in a big house with her father and her cat Lucy. When Lucy gets sick and dies, Christine is devastated. But alone in her room, something special happens. A panther pops out of the dresser drawer and begins to tell her stories of distant Pantherland, where he is the crown prince. So this is an interesting premise for Panther. And the thing about Panther, at least the title that really strikes me, is not just the solicit for the premise, but is Evans's art.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, his art is, and I'm familiar with The Making of, which is just incredible, and that is resolicited as well as The Wrong Place. The art is just really a wonder to behold, and I'm not really sure how I would describe it, but once you see it, you won't forget it.
Right. So anything else in Drawn in Quarterly?
No, that does it for me.
So you want to go to Fantagraphics?
I do.
Unless you have something before that.
No, I don't.
Okay. And I think the first thing we get is on page 364, Meg and Moog in Amsterdam and Other Stories. And this is by Simon Hanselman, who previously did Megahex.
Right.
And so you have the solicit there in front of you. I mean, you don't have to read it, but...
I do have the solicit, yeah.
But I mean, just allude to it,
Oh, well, this is a collection of some of Hasselman's contributions to Vice.com, and actually, it looks like it is a collection of some of his. Now, I have not read Hasselman's first work, Megahex, so yeah, I'm probably not the one to tell you an awful lot about this, other than what it says here in the solicit.
Yeah. But that's one definitely worth checking out. And then another one that is also on page 364 is Wally Wood's Shattuck. And if now, did you get or have you looked at his canon that came out a couple of years ago from Fantagraphics?
I looked at it when I saw it. Actually, I saw it in the store, and I looked at it, and I'd read a few reviews of it that said, the artwork, of course, is incredible. Some people that I spoke to were not crazy about the story, but they were really pretty crazy about all the women on display in canon. And I wondered if Shattuck is a different, or is kind of another type of book like canon, except as a Western.
I'm wondering about that as well, and that's what, at least on the Fantagraphics side, and I'm sure in the solicit they're making reference to canon. So, especially in terms of the format. So this is going to be presented in a similar format as canon, but you're right. It does seem the way that it's described to be a Western canon, if you want to look at it that way. Now, I don't know if it will be as gratuitous as canon was. Now, personally, I like the story of canon, and also personally, I really didn't. I didn't have a problem with the gratuitiveness of canon because I knew what to expect,
right?
And I knew that it was written with a particular audience in mind, men in the military overseas. And so the TNA, the fact that, almost at the drop of a hat, a woman's naked for almost no reason at all. I mean, again, you may not like that, but given its intended audience, and also given the fact that this was Wally Wood, who can draw women incredibly, I just, took it on its domain, right? So maybe the same thing is going on here. I don't know. I'm not familiar with Shattuck, but one of the things that's notable about Shattuck is that this is some of the first work that we see coming from Howard Chaykin and Dave Cockrum, who worked with Wally Wood on this.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about Shattuck is that it is a much shorter book than Canon. Canon was a nearly 300-page book, and according to the solicit, Shattuck is only 72 pages, but it does appear to be in full color, which Canon was a black and white only.
Right. So this is something that I would definitely like to check out.
Yeah.
And then, again, like Drawn and Quarterly, you can always count on a lot of good stuff each month from Fantagraphics. And also on page 364 is 5,000 kilometers per second. And this is interesting. Now, this is written by Manuel Fior, and this won the grand prize of the 2010 Angoulême Comics Festival. And it tells the story of the love between Piero and Lucia, which begins with a casual glance exchanged by teenagers across the street through a window and ends with a last desperate hookup between two older, sadder, one-time lovers. Executed in stunning watercolors and broken down into 5 chapters, 5,000 kilometers per second manages to refer to Piero and Lucia's actual love story, only obliquely, focused instead on its first stirrings and then episodes in their life during which they are separated. A narrative twist that makes it even more poignant and heart-wrenching.
I'm definitely going to pick this one up, Derek. I'm very excited about... first of all, I'm always excited about works that are translated from other languages into English. And, this, as you mentioned, this is a very celebrated book in Europe when it came out, I think, in 2009. Mm-hmm. So we're getting a English translation of it. There's very, very little that we get in the solicit other than the cover and one small panel of artwork, but just from that, I know I'm going to get it.
Yeah, and Fantagraphics is really good at bringing some of these non-North American and non-English language comics, both European and also Japanese, to English audiences. You and I not long ago discussed The Eternaut, which, should have been published in an English edition years and years ago. So it was great that finally came out last year. And now we're getting 5,000 kilometers per second. And of course, Fantagraphics has a great track record with manga as well.
Yeah, so very very excited to have Fantagraphics continuing the great work that they're doing. As you said, with the Eternaut, this is also very, very exciting.
Yeah. And then on that next page, 365, there is Joe Daly's Highbone Theater. And this seems really interesting, and I'm probably going to pick this up as well.
Yeah, I'm going to pick it up as well, too. This is a standalone graphic novel. And actually, I'm not looking at the solicit, but it says, existential stoners go on a suspenseful quest in this ambitious graphic novel from the South African cartoonist Joe Daly. Yeah. And actually, I'm just reading that from Amazon.
Yeah.
And actually, it may say that as well on the solicit. But yeah, and again, we don't get very much. We get the front cover, and if you go online, you can get a little bit more, a few other images about this. But this is a big book. It's 568 pages of black and white art, and 192 of those pages are in color.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, this looks like a very interesting book.
And after Fantagraphics, we go to another favorite of ours, and that is First Second.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm pretty sure that first solicit on 366 is something that you're particularly interested in. Yes.
In fact, Gwen and I have already snagged this. The Nameless City by Faith Erin Hicks is definitely going to be on our list of books that we do.
Oh, really? Good.
Yeah, this is definitely going to be on there. We're just waiting for it to come out. So one of the things I love about this is Faith Erin Hicks was responsible for one of the books that I really, really love that came out in 2013 called The Adventures of Superhero Girl. Very, very good book, especially for teens, and this looks like it's going to be the same thing. And the solicit talks about every nation that invades the city gives it a new name. But before long, new invaders arrive, and the city changes hands and names once again. The natives don't let themselves get caught up in the unending wars. To them, their home is the nameless city, and those who try to name it are forever outsiders. Kedu is one such outsider. He's a Dao born and bred, one of the latest occupying nations. Rat is a native of the nameless city. At first, she hates Kai for everything he stands for, but his love of his new home may be the one thing that can bring these two unlikely friends together. So, the Nameless City looks like and this is something that Hicks fans have been waiting for a long time, because Adventures of Superhero Girl did come out a few years ago, even though Friends with Boys came out in paperback in 2015. This should be really, really good. And again, if you have not experienced Faith Erin Hicks, this is probably going to be a great title to start with.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're very excited about this one.
So, after First Second, I go to Putnam's.
Okay.
And this is, on page 368.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I think I have this marked as well.
And this is Original Fake.
Mm-hmm.
And this is written by Kristen Crone Mills with art by E. Aero Johnson. This looks really interesting. And I don't know either of these creators, and what caught my attention was the fact that this is listed under Putnam, and Putnam is a fairly big trade publisher, and it's not often that major trade publishers do graphic novels or comics. So whenever they do, I like to pay attention because, many times it's either a recognizable name or it's something that at least the editors there think has a lot of potential to really take off. And so this looks really interesting. And I'm reading from Amazon Solicits. It says, introvert Frankie Newman hates his life, and understandably so. He's got a weird tutu-wearing sister, Lou, and even weirder parents, Bridget and Brett, Frank Sinatra and Dr. Frankenfurter impersonators, respectively. Okay? And he's just the guy who makes pizza at Pizza Vendetta. Though he has secret artistic and aspirations of his own, his over-the-top family makes him want to stay in the background. But Frankie's life is about to change, becoming way more interesting, even a little dangerous, but definitely cool. And then it goes on to, I guess, what the setup is. Something happens one night after he leaves the pizzeria. He meets someone and runs an errand for mysterious Uncle Epic, a legendary anonymous street artist and Frankie's absolute idol. Little could Frankie dream that his new adventures with Uncle Epic would lead to the perfect opportunity to strike back at his insufferable sister for a lifetime of torture. And when I was looking over this solicit originally, it struck me as this may also be a title that maybe you guys can consider for the Young Reader Show. Although, we could easily discuss it on regular episodes of the Comics Alternative.
Yeah, I actually had it marked down to consider for the young readers since actually Solicit says G.P. Putnam's son's books for young readers. So anything that's got that, it's going to draw my attention. But yeah, like you, Derek, I'm not familiar with these creators, but looking on Amazon, it has already gotten really good reviews, advanced reader reviews from Kirkus, which is very, very important for library folks, Publishers Weekly. It's a big book. It's like over 350 pages, and I'm really interested in checking this out.
Yeah. So where do you go after Putnam?
There are a few things that I have in graphics, but most of those are just resolicits and reissues, so nothing super earth-shattering there.
Yeah.
Same thing with No Brow.
Before we get to that, I just want to mention, and I won't go into too much detail here, but I like what Humanoids does, and they have two new titles that solicited, Cape Horn and Elias the Cursed, and both of these are on page 378. So you may want to check those out. And then after that, not too far after that, this is on page 384, from Kodansha Comics, Appleseed Alpha. Volume 1 is going to be coming out. And this looks interesting. I've been getting more into manga over the past 2 years, and which is one of the reasons why Shay and I started last year the monthly manga series. And this is something that, I don't know, we may want to consider as well. Io Kuroda, it is, by Io Kuroda. So I'm not familiar with his work, but it may be worth checking out. It says it takes place in the 22nd century, so it's futuristic, war-torn place, post-apocalyptic. We have cyborgs and, this battered utopia or dystopia now. So, this has all the ingredients of an interesting manga title.
Yeah, it does. Looks interesting.
Yeah. And then you had mentioned No Brow, but actually there are two other things before we get to No Brow, unless you want to go ahead and mention the No Brow thing.
No, you go ahead.
Yeah. Now, on page 394 in the NBM section is, I guess, the next in this Louvre series that they're publishing, and this is Guardians of the Louvre. And this is something that Kunk and I noted, I think maybe 2 months ago when we were looking through the previews catalog, that there were a number of books about the Louvre that were solicited, and a couple of them, I guess, are a part of this series. And you have the catalog there in front of you. Who is the author of Guardians of the Louvre?
That is Hiro Taniguchi.
Okay.
If I'm saying that correctly.
Okay. So, that may be worth checking out. And then another work that seems interesting, and this is published through New York Review comics, and again, it was the publisher that originally caught my attention, and this is Bluch is the author, Peplum. And Bluch is Blutch for those of you playing at home. And this, it seems interesting. I'm reading off Amazon. It says, the man known as Bluch is one of the giants of contemporary comics, and Peplum may be his masterpiece, a grand, strange dream of ancient Rome. At the edge of the empire, a gang of bandits discovers the body of a beautiful woman in a cave. She is encased in ice, but may still be alive. One of the bandits, wearing a stolen name and the frozen maiden in tow, makes his way toward Rome, seeking power, or maybe just survival as the world unravels. Just looking off of this order form where I don't have much information, what originally drew me to this title was the fact that it was published by New York Review Comics. And so, the publisher does tell you something about the kind of book that it might be.
Derek, I'm glad you mentioned it because I completely blew through that on the way to Nobrow, and this really does look interesting. The only thing on the solicit here that expands on what you said, it says thrilling and hallucinatory, vast in scope, yet unnervingly intimate. Peplum weaves together threads from Shakespeare and the Satyricon, along with Bluch's own distinctive vision. So, yeah, this really looks interesting.
Okay, so now on to Nobrow.
And just a quick stop at Nobrow. If anyone is into graphic novels for young readers and has not encountered the Hilda series by Luke Pearson, you really should. And a lot of these are being reissued in trade paperback, so they're a little bit more affordable. These are great stories. And Hilda is a great character. She has tons of adventures. And again, these are all reissues, although a new Hilda book, I think, is scheduled to come out in September of this year. Great stuff. And so if you haven't, get caught up on Hilda.
Okay. Do you have anything in Oni?
No.
Yeah. There's one new title solicited. This is on page 397, and this is Heartthrob. This is from the team of Christopher Sabella, Robert Wilson IV, and Nick Filardi. And it seems like an interesting title. Now, I specifically wanted to mention this and shout it out because of a friend of the show, Robert Wilson IV. In fact, he's a local boy. He lives in the DFW area. So I see him quite often whenever I go to Dallas Cons. But I also see him other places, like at Heroes Con, and I think there have been other events that I've seen him at, maybe in Austin. So, I see him quite frequently, and it's good that over the past year he has gotten more attention now. But anyway, this title, Heartthrob, I don't have a solicit in front of me. I just have a brief write-up of it on Comics Alliance. But what is the premise? You don't have to read the entire solicit, but just what is the premise of Heartthrob?
Well, the premise is about a young girl who has had pretty much a lifetime of illnesses, and she's apparently rescued by a miracle cure in the form of a heart transplant. But when she comes back to life, things are very, very different. And she has it says a morally questionable job, a crappy boyfriend, crippling hospital bills, and she finds that she's got new tastes and new abilities, and she basically is trying to balance out what she has to do with what she wants to do. A mystery man shows up, and it looks like it's a lot of fun. And I'm glad you mentioned Wilson because he's a very talented guy. Has done some great work, artwork and color work too. So this looks like it would be a fun title. Actually, this is one that I passed over because there's an alternate cover that takes off on Fleetwood Mac's Rumors album cover, which I kind of got burned out on. So I think I just zipped by this. But yeah, this looks like it would be a fun title.
Yeah. And then after that, I next go to Pantheon.
Okay, I don't have anything until Self-Made Hero.
Okay, oh yeah, big time Self-Made Hero. But on Pantheon is The Odyssey of Sergeant Jack Brennan. And again, it's the publisher that caught my attention. I knew about this title before. But, Pantheon is a major trade publisher, so anytime they do books, pay attention to them because there may be something good in store. And this is by Brian Doerries, and I'm not sure how you pronounce the name. It's Doerries. And it's Jack Brennan is a Marine Corps sergeant whose infantry squad has been cleared to return home from a grueling deployment to Afghanistan. A few years prior, Sergeant Brennan lost one of his closest friends, a young combat veteran, to suicide and has vowed to do everything in his power to keep his Marines from a similar fate. On their last night in country, Brennan, who has long kept a tattered copy of the Odyssey with him on deployment, shares his version of Homer's classic with his fellow soldiers to help prepare them for the transition back home. Brennan plunges into a rich retelling of Odyssey's long journey home from battlefield by Troy, during which Odysseus and his men confront numerous obstacles, from the lure of a psychedelic lotus plant to ghoulish shades in the land of the dead to the seductive song of the deadly sirens as they try to make it back to Greece. Along the way, Brennan and his fellow Marines map the struggles faced by Odysseus and his men into their own: isolation, addiction, guilt, depression, and loss. So there you have an interesting confluence between the Odyssey and current military adventures overseas. So this has promise.
Yeah, and that's another one that I kind of went by quickly, but actually from what you said, it does sound promising.
Mm-hmm. Okay, now on to Self-Made Hero.
Yes, and for those following at home, this is page 410. And actually, we've got two titles from Self-Made Hero. We have An Olympic Dream, the story of Samia Youssef Omar by Reinhard Kleist. And this is about the Somalian runner and in the Olympics. And it looks like it's a very interesting story. It follows Omar's second attempt to represent her country at the Olympics, this time in London, telling the story of a remarkable young woman. Kleist gives voice to the thousands of migrants who risk their lives daily for a better future. So this based on a true story, looks like it would be very, very compelling. And we also have a graphic novel called Ermina by Barbara Yellen. This is a story about a young woman named Ermina in the mid-1930s. A young German woman who travels to London, where she meets one of the first black students at Oxford, whose name was Howard Green. And Green, like Ermina, is looking for really a more independent existence, and a love affair blossoms between the two, and it gets more into some of the political situations, Hitler's Germany. This is based on a true story, so this looks like it's kind of epic in scope about this relationship. But again, this looks like a really compelling story about, life in wartime Germany, and, anything that we have that's like that, I'm always attracted to.
Right. And you can never go wrong with Self-Made Hero. They do great work. We've discussed their books quite often on the Comics Alternative. We did a publisher spotlight on Self-Made Hero a little over a year ago. Mm-hmm. Probably do another one this year. Who knows? So both of these that are solicited in the February catalog are really good. But I'm particularly interested in Ermina.
Yeah.
So that's really good. Now, I just have a few other things, but I'll mention, I guess, a couple of them more in passing than anything. Do you have anything else in the catalog?
No, I am done.
You're done? Yeah. Under Valiant, and this is on page 446, we have issue number 1 of Divinity 2, and I'll mention that because I think that the first Divinity was really good. In fact, we discussed issue 1 of the original Divinity on a previous episode. And then on page 457, and this is under Vertical Comics, there is a graphic novel, work of manga, The Gods Lie. And I looked that up and I thought that, that may be worth checking out for another manga episode that Shay and I do. And then that's all I have in the comics section proper. But Andy, remember earlier I said that I wanted to mention something else about Ed Brubaker and possibly Criminal toward the end of the show?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, this is that moment. If you go to page 480, this is in the books section, you'll find solicited another book in the University Press of Mississippi's Conversations with Comic Artists series, and this is Ed Brubaker, Conversation, and this is edited by Terrence Watke. And this is worth mentioning for a couple, well, actually, more than a couple, for several reasons. First off, if you're not already familiar with University Press of Mississippi's Conversation with Comic Artists series, it's phenomenal. Currently, I'm at work, and I need to hightail it and finish things up. I'm at work on a volume for them on the Hernandez Brothers. So in the next year or two, I'll be publishing the Hernandez Brothers Conversations through University Press of Mississippi. And but they have a whole line, just recently, just last year, they had a volume on Seth. They had a volume on Peter Bagg. And they're just wonderful collections of interviews from a variety of sources that, the editors collect and put out in one volume. And it's also worth mentioning because, there's so much going on with Ed Brubaker. We mentioned the criminal titles, the Fade Out. So there's a lot going on with Ed Brubaker. So this conversation series this volume is rather timely. Another thing that's notable about this is that the editor Terrence Watke, just last year came out with a book called The Dark Knight, Night Returns. And the book is a critical study on the resurgence from the 1980s onward of crime or even noir comics. And Ed Brubaker is one of the major creators that Watke focuses on in that book. And that's a really good study. And I would highly recommend that to anyone interested in not only crime or noir comics, but just crime noir period. So, Andy, with your interest in film noir, you definitely should check out The Dark Knight Returns. But that's written by Terrence Watke, who also is the editor of Ed Brubaker Conversations.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this Ed Brubaker book because he is, and I think we could both say he's one of our favorite current creators, and he's done so many great things, not just criminal and Fatal, but he's also done a lot of great work with Captain America, Daredevil. He's really done everything, and he really can do everything. He's very versatile and always interesting.
Well, Andy, we've covered a lot of ground in the February previews catalog. It in a way, it's kind of depressing that there's so much good stuff because either it takes a big cut into your budget or you're going to have to decide what not to get.
Yeah, it always is a problem. Like you said, Derek, it's a double-edged sword. We get to see so many great things coming out, but, we can't get them all.
That's right. But, a great place to get as many of the comics mentioned today as humanly possible is to go to the website of one of our sponsors for this episode, and that is Discount Comic Book Service. Make sure you check out dcbservice.com. They're going to have their February specials up pretty darn soon, maybe by the time this episode goes up, and you will be amazed at the number of specials that you can get there. I don't think you can find cheaper comics anywhere, so that's Discount Comic Book Service, dcbservice.com. Check them out, and as you're sitting there at your computer, you'll probably be, sipping a nice cup of coffee, and it should be just coffee, co-op coffee. Remember, it's 100% fair trade, shade grown, and organic certified. Go to their website, justcoffee.coop, that's .coop, and in checkout, make sure you use our coupon code COMICS for 10% off of your order, and remember, shipping is free.
That's right. You can't beat that.
And after you're waiting for your comics and your coffee to get to you in the mail, you can get in touch with us and let us know what you think of this previews episode. If you go to our website, comicsalternative.com, you'll find that you can leave us a voice message through SpeakPipe. It's very simple and easy to use. Or you can call us the old-fashioned way. Our phone number is 415-3-COMICS. That's 415-326-6427.
And to find out the latest news to the blog and our growing list of reviews and other items, you can follow us on Twitter. We are at the number 2 guys with PhDs, and we appreciate everybody that retweets all of our tweets.
That's right. You can also email us. We're 2guys@comicsalternative.com. You can email me directly. I'm Derek at comicsalternative.com.
And I'm Wolverton at comicsalternative.com.
That's right. You can also find us on other social media outlets such as Facebook, Tumblr, Instagram, Google+, Goodreads, and Pinterest. We even have a YouTube channel, so check that out. You can subscribe to the podcast through iTunes. You can stream us on Stitcher. You can also find us on TuneIn, and you can find every single one of our episodes as well as the reviews and the comics-related commentary that we post on our blog. And that's at our website, comicsalternative.com.
Right, so all kinds of ways to get in touch with us and let us know what you're reading and how we're doing.
That's right. And Andy, it's been a long time since you and I did a previews episode together, so it was nice doing this again with you.
Yeah, and I'll have to tell Kunka that, we didn't do our normal 12-hour episode, so this one only was, 5 hours?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
So, we had a good time going through the catalog, and we hope you, dear listener, had a great time listening to us go through the catalog. And until next week, you guys take care. I'm Derek.
And I'm Andy.
We'll see you later.